Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 872B, and today's date is January 20th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The U.S. Government is Ready to Light Up the Middle East. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, Thursday, I'll be uploading an interview with Greg Manarino. He'll be uploaded to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. If you're subscribed to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, you will get an email from YouTube, which I hope they do. If not, and you're signed up to the X22 Report email alert system, you will get an email from me. Or you can come right over to the YouTube channel. You'll see the video there. Or you can come over to the x22report.com site. You can scroll down a little bit. It'll be over on your right-hand side. Or you can go to the news site, which is newssentinel.com. That's NEWZSENTINEL.com. Scroll down a little bit. It will be on your right-hand side. News Sentinel is a site that I built where we're streaming in news stories from around the world all into one location. It also includes videos. So there's one place where everyone can go and you can find out what's going on in the world. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the United States government central bankers, they've been trying for quite a while to determine who is a journalist and who isn't a journalist. And we know Dianne Feinstein, she put forth a bill and she wanted to register journalists. They had to be approved by the United States government central bankers. And of course, we know why they wanted to do this. It's because they wanted those people that were going to tell their story, and only their story and not the truth. Well, in South Carolina, Mike Pitts, who's a representative in South Carolina, he introduced a new bill which would establish a responsible journalism registry. And it's going to be operated by the South Carolina Secretary of State. The summary of the bill states that it would establish requirements for persons before working as a journalist for a media outlet and for media outlets before hiring a journalist, as well as establish penalties, fines, and jail sentences for violations, and of course, for other purposes. So the bill is H4702, and this is how journalists will be determined competent, essentially at the whim of the Secretary of State, by stating the following. Before working as a journalist for a media outlet in the state, a person shall provide a criminal record background check to the media outlet to determine journalistic competence and register with the South Carolina Responsible Journalism Registry. After registering, the person shall provide a copy of the registration to the media outlet. A person may not work as a journalist until the person provides a copy of registration to the media outlet. Now, a person is not competent to be a journalist if, within the 3 years before submitting an application for registration, the person has been determined by a court of law to have committed libel, slander, or invasion of privacy, a felony if the underlying offense was committed to collect, write, or distribute news or other current information for a media outlet. As a journalist, the person has demonstrated a reckless disregard of the basic codes and canons of professional journalism associations, including disregard of the truth, accuracy, objectivity, impartiality, fairness, and public accountability. When you hear this, it sounds like the corporate media. And haven't we had journalists working for the corporate media that have lied to the American people, and then they got rehired for millions of dollars? So maybe they should be looking at the corporate media for this, because the independent people, we're trying to get the truth out there. We're trying to get people to think. We're trying to show everything that you see is not the truth. And maybe they should start looking inside instead of going after the alternative media, because that's what this is really focused on. Why are they doing this? Because they don't want the alternative media out there. They don't want the alternative media reporting on things that they cannot control. And this is why Dianne Feinstein has that bill floating around Congress. This is why South Carolina is trying to push this bill. And basically what they're trying to do is they're controlling the flow of information. That is what they're trying to do. Remember, they need full control of everything. They have control of the creation of money. They want the control if someone has a weapon. They want control of information. Right now, they have control of the corporate media. They don't have control of the internet. And this is a problem for them. And they want full control. And the only way to do this is to decide who's a journalist and who is not a journalist. In California, which has very strict gun laws, they want to enact another gun law, basically limiting people to buy one firearm every month. Because what happened in San Bernardino, which we've shown that was a complete false flag, which was created by certain agencies. And of course, the message got all mixed up because we had the gun control group on one side, we had the terror group, which was trying to push their meme, and both views collided completely. But California already has the very, very strict gun laws. And they want to make it even stricter. Basically, you can see what they're doing. They're trying to get the weapons away from the people, period. This is their main motive right now. And we see the president doing it. We see other states doing it. And then we see other states saying, you know something? We want our people to carry weapons. We want them to be protected. Because when you see a mass shooting, it doesn't matter if it's a false flag or if it's real. The first thing that pops into my mind, well, I want to protect myself and my family. And the only way to do that against these type of people is to have a weapon. But the government came out and said the best thing you can do is to get rid of your weapon, is not to purchase a weapon when there's a mass shooting, which is completely opposite of common sense. That's why it doesn't even make sense. We see out in Moldova, at the Moldovan capital, protesters have clashed with police and broken into the parliament building. And they're protesting because the lawmakers approved the appointment of a pro-EU politician to the post of prime minister. And the protesters said, no way is this going to happen. Actually, we're seeing the opposite of what happened in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government went with Russia, and the United States stepped in and had a coup d'etat and said that people wanted to be part of the EU. Here in the Moldovan capital, we have the people saying, no, we don't want to be part of the EU. And we don't want a lawmaker to be part and be pro-EU. So we see the opposite happening there. And we'll have to watch that situation very carefully to see what happens in that area. And the people in Moldova are saying, we don't need a government that says pleasant things. We need a government that solves our problems. And I agree with this. We need a government that works for the people. And that should be everywhere. But we're finding out most of these governments, they work for corporations, foreign entities, central bankers, and the last on the list is the people, and sometimes they're not even included. The UK, they're going to be sending about 1,000 troops to Poland. Why? Because of Russian aggression. So 1,000 troops are going to be heading to Poland, and they're going to be stationed there because of Russian aggression. So we see what's happening at this point. All the countries on the private Western Central Bank have been positioning soldiers, military assets across Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, in Africa, in the Pacific. Why? Because they're preparing for World War III. And going back 2, 3, 4 years, this has accelerated. They do it very quietly, methodically. They tell you it's for drills, but all of this is in preparation for the next war. Now, because of this alleged nuclear weapons test in North Korea, which was never proved, they didn't detect any radiation. There was no proof of it whatsoever. All they have is an earthquake. But because of this, we see that South Korea restarted its propaganda against North Korea. They increased their military budget. The United States went to South Korea. They're going to be delivering more lethal weapons there. They're prepping and provoking North Korea with B-52 flybys. And we're starting to see that they're going to take this to the next level. South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, they have agreed to provide technology to member nations to search North Korean ships on the high seas. Because North Korea, they have trade with China, Burma, Thailand. They have some trade with Vietnam, Malaysia. And they stop at these different ports. And South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, they're going to create this group where they will basically search the North Korean ships for materials involved in the production of weapons of mass destruction. So basically, they're keeping track of all the North Korean ships, and it's looking like they're going to provoke North Korea. And this is all part of it because, as we know, the players are all the same. China, Russia, North Korea. It's going to be Iran. It's going to be Syria and many of the BRIC nations. We see out in Afghanistan, the U.S. is provoking Russia there. There was a bombing near the Russian embassy in Afghanistan. We see that the United States is going to have a more of an active role for the special forces in Afghanistan. I mean, they're already playing an active role there, but they're going to expand this. And we can see already that forces are heading towards Afghanistan. We're going to see the forces increase in Afghanistan, and we are going to be back in the war in Afghanistan. Because Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Libya, Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, it's all about fighting Russia in the end. It's all about fighting China in the end. And this is where we are headed. Now, out in Ukraine, we see Ukraine is working with the IMF to restructure the $3 billion debt to Russia. They defaulted on it. They're trying to restructure it. And Moscow's saying, listen, the bond is part of an external commercial debt. The bond is a loan provided by one country to another, and you need to repay this. And Kiev, they just don't have the money for it. That's why they defaulted. But they're not going to worry about this sooner than later, because what's going to happen here is they're going to mount a major offensive. All of a sudden, the U.S. wants to be included, or they want the information from the Normandy 4 info. So, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland basically wants up-to-date information on the Normandy Quartet process on Ukrainian reconciliation. Now, the United States is not party to the Normandy process, but they want the information. Now, wasn't Victoria Nuland the one who orchestrated the coup d'etat in Ukraine? What do you think they're up to right now? Well, they want the information. They want to know where they're at. Because what they're going to do is they're going to mount a major offensive. We're getting more reports from DPR, Defense Ministry, that Kiev is moving more and more artillery units, tanks, IVFs to the contact line. They're documenting everything. And we see at this point, they have 41 tanks, 5 self-propelled artillery systems, 8 infantry fighting vehicles, and 3 Grad multiple rocket launcher systems were spotted on the contact line. And what Ukraine is doing is they're moving them all around, but keeping them right up there. And they're preparing and getting ready. Right now, they're in winter. Most likely, we might see another offensive like we saw last year happen in the spring when weather gets a little bit warmer. And we'll have to see how well it goes, because we know the U.S. and other nations have been supplying Ukraine with lethal and non-lethal weapons. They've been training the soldiers and preparing them. Now, Libya's new unity government is stuck in Tunisia. And the prime minister, he unveiled his new unity cabinet, and basically they control absolutely nothing. Why? Because the elected government in Tripoli will not let them in. They said they don't agree to this. And things are not looking good for the unity government. The cabinet right now isn't a government or anything without approval from the parliament, which is based in Tobruk. And their inability to even get back into Libya has already led to 2 members of the nation's presidential council completely resigning from it, saying, okay, this is ridiculous. This is not working. We created a government outside of the country, and we're not really the government. Well, this is what they tried to do with the puppet government. They said, okay, the puppet government is the government, but we're not located in Tripoli. So what they did is they moved the central bank out of Tripoli. They moved everything out of Tripoli, saying, okay, here we are, we're based someplace else. But the Constitution says the government has to be in Tripoli. So right now, the Libyan lawmakers say the internationally backed parliament is unlikely to approve a UN-brokered unity government. The House of Representatives said, we are not going to cave into international pressure. We are not going for this whatsoever. But I notice on the corporate media, they are pushing the idea that the unity government has been formed and everything is fine. We see peace in the air. No, what they really want is the unity government to call in the strikes. They have the military prepared, the U.S., Egypt, the U.K., Italy, forces, planes, all ready to go in Libya. They just need to get the unity government into Tripoli to say, yes, we need help with the Islamic State. This is the whole point of it. Now, Washington is unveiling an investigation into Russian meddling in the EU. So, basically right now, we see the U.S. Director of National Intelligence. He has been instructed by Congress to begin the major review into Russia's clandestine funding of EU parties over the last decade. Wait a minute. Shouldn't we be looking into the United States and its funding into other countries, and how other countries have taken control of our government? Well, this is not about that whatsoever. This is about calling out Russia and making them the evil country, that they're swaying European leaders to move to their side. They're talking about how Moscow destabilized Europe. Well, I could say the United States is doing a fine job with that. And they're also saying that Russia has been fostering agitation against NATO missile defense and attempting to exploit European disunity on the subject. Well, I think the United States is doing a fine job of that, because they place sanctions on Russia. It's hurting Europe, but not the United States. So what we're seeing right now is the U.S. is demonizing and going after Russia once again. They keep changing their strategy, but the goal is always the same, because they have to make sure everyone understands that Russia is going to be our enemy during the war. Now, out in Syria, Russia has been hitting the Islamic State hard. We see that the terrorists are retreating under the offensive launched by the government forces and by the Russian bombing. And we can see at this point that the Islamic State is losing, and they're being pushed further and further east. And what this means is that Assad, Russia, they have the upper hand. I mean, the Russian airstrikes have proven to be so effective in the fight against the Syrian rebels, against the Islamic State, against al-Nusra, that Obama's ceasefire plan is becoming irrelevant. Remember, they're pushing this, the United States is pushing this ceasefire plan, not a peace deal, a ceasefire plan, to give them time to regroup. But at this point, Assad, which he has no intention of stepping down, the people have to vote, is winning. He has the upper hand. And it seems like this ceasefire deal is kind of falling apart at this time because they might not even need it. And this is worrying the United States. Right now, the United States says, well, we might have to delay the ceasefire plan, which was planned for January 25th, which is in 5 days. Because things aren't going as well as we thought, and we might just have to delay it a little bit. And what they're really saying is they're losing ground, and Assad now has the upper hand. So the deal that Assad and Russia makes is going to be on their side. And if they make any deal, it's going to be under their terms, not the United States. And this is why the United States is delaying. So we might see at this point the Middle East light up. We might see a major event because they're not going to go into these ceasefire talks unless the U.S. has the upper hand. And right now, they do not. So we're going to have to watch this situation very, very carefully. Now, the Islamic State, they put out videos left and right. We know this is all propaganda from the United States government, Israel site intelligence. And they put out a video about how they're going to be attacking Italy. And we know there's warnings going on between the 22nd and the 27th of January in Italy. And we have to keep a close eye on that to see if there's any type of false flag to get Italy into the fight with the Islamic State. And they show the Islamic State, in Rome, waving their flag. And they're saying as soon as we finish off Libya, we're going into Rome. Now, we're starting to see a lot of this propaganda go full force forward here, because what they need to do is they need everyone to believe that the Islamic State is still strong. The Islamic State has the ability to attack, but we know all of this is coming from the inside. Just like the FBI gave that warning about a terrorist attack inside or around the Super Bowl. And every time the FBI gives a warning, I'm kind of leery of the FBI and them coming out telling us that, there could be some type of terror attack. Now, we know they've been practicing drills around the stadium in the area for some type of terrorist attack. Now, they do this quite often at a major sporting event or any other big event. But like I said before, it seems like every time they tell us that something's going to happen, nothing does. And this is a very big event. I mean, there's cameras everywhere. I mean, yes, can they shut everything down? But there's just so many people. It's a situation where they'd have to control every aspect of what was going on in this area. And it could be very difficult to control this type of false flag. But this doesn't mean there won't be one. But I think what they're doing is they're using a scare tactic for another event. Because normally when we see these events, it pops up someplace we don't expect. It's never at a huge event that's going on. It's at a smaller event. Or it's in an area which no one would ever suspect. And this is why I'm thinking they're taking our eyes off of everything else, making us look at this while they're planning the real events in other locations. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.